Welcome to The Real Heal. I am your host, Dr. Renee Wallenstein, also known as the libidoologist. So if you're ready, let's get into it. Whitney, I am so excited to have you on the show today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
And, we're going to actually cover a topic I have never covered in great detail on the show. And I think we're coming on our 4-year anniversary next month in May. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. And I'm not going to actually go into what we're going to talk about. Everyone's going to have to wait for that. But before we get into the nitty gritty, tell us who you are and how you got doing what you're doing today.
Sure. So my name is Whitney Tougas. By training, I am a speech language pathologist, which is a far cry from this work that I do, which is as an intimacy and pleasure coach. I use my training as a voice therapist in addition to this work to work with transgender women on voice and expression. And for the past 2 decades, I've studied sexuality and energetics and tantra, and that led into kink and BDSM. And I've had this curiosity most of my life about it, and started realizing that there were things that I was learning and that I intuitively understood that most people didn't know, because sex and pleasure is not something that we're taught. Mm-hmm. So I began teaching it and realized that this information is not only deeply needed, but largely absent from any of our education, either formally or informally. These are just conversations that aren't happening. So what I do now is I share the things that I have learned and continue to learn to help women with vulvas have access I think the most powerful energy that we as humans, and especially as women, have, which is our sexual energy, which creates everything from businesses to babies. And I teach them how to experience the 5 transcendent orgasms that are possible for them to experience, how to heal through sex, and how to reclaim this core aspect of our identity as humans and ourselves so that they can feel fully expressed and free in their lives.
I love that. It's just, the pivot was amazing. And I was very curious how you got into this. And it's much needed because, as we were saying before we started recording, I work with women with low libido, but I come at it from a, connection part, like they don't even want to connect with their partners. And then you actually take it a step further and really deepen that connection in or out of the bedroom, but with by yourself or with a partner. So we're going to get into that as well. So, I think where I would love to start is talking about the shame aspect of sex and orgasm, because I think a lot of us have been conditioned growing up to think that sex is just to make babies, and any sex outside of, that purpose is dirty, is shameful. You should not be doing it. It's sinful. Can you talk to us about how you help women eliminate that shame and start the healing process as far as envisioning sex and orgasm as healthy?
Yeah, absolutely. I work with a lot of women who were raised in purity culture. I know that you were raised as Catholic, and certainly, I have a lot of friends who are Catholic, and it's a really beautiful faith, but it is something that vilifies sexuality and sexual expression, as do a lot of other religions and aspects of our culture, whether or not you were raised religious. I was raised in South Carolina personally. So while I wasn't raised in a religious household, I was raised in the buckle of the Bible Belt, and a lot of the messages I received outside of my home were similar to what you and sounds like a lot of the people who listen to this podcast received, which is, sex isn't something that we even talk about. So I lead workshops. I work one-on-one with women. I have a group program called School of Sexual Sorcery, and I also lead large workshops and speak to large groups. And one of my favorite things to do to start the conversation and to normalize this experience that we all share of not being taught about this or given permission to discuss it is to ask women what they were taught to call their genitals. What were you taught to call your genitals when you were growing up?
I didn't even know there was names for them. I don't even
Amazing.
remember. Yeah, yeah.
I
Like I
was
said,
taught
I didn't even know what a period was. So like I was disconnected from that part down there.
Yeah. So the message you were told, like most of us, I have yet to come across a woman who was taught as a child that her genitalia was called a vulva. Mine were called private parts. That's what I was told they were
Mm,
called. But so if you think about teaching a child the parts of their body, this is a nose, this is an eye, this is a thumb, and then you get to the genitals and there's no name for that, which
mm,
the implied message is we don't talk about that. That's
mhm.
something that is shamed because we don't
Yep.
so much as name it. So I think that this runs deep, regardless of how you were raised and your religious upbringing. There's this pervasive message of shame from the time we're too young to even understand that's what is being taught. And I don't think our parents did that on purpose. I
Mhm.
don't think anyone who's raising children and taught their children that their genitals are called private parts is doing it on purpose.
Right.
But shame starts early.
Mhm.
And something that I think is really important in starting to unwind it is, first of all, like going back to square one. Like, let's learn what our genitals are called.
Yep.
Let's get to the point that we can say the words without feeling any kind of, desire to giggle or look away. Like you would say elbow, you can say clitoris.
Yep.
Like you would say wrist, you can say vulva,
Yep.
and knowing the difference between them so that you start to build this acceptance of that part of your body and integrate it into your vernacular, into
Mhm.
your physical experience of being in the world. That's really foundational, ground one to me, and something anyone can do.
That's great. Yeah, it's interesting as you're speaking. I remember, sitting in multiple office visits with patients when I was a practicing gynecologist, and a lot of women had a problem down there. Like they didn't
Mhm.
know, and they couldn't exactly ever tell me where they had it. A lot of times they could show me, but they really, didn't know, like you said, they didn't have a vocabulary for their parts. They just would say down there, and it was really hard until I got them undressed to take a look myself to figure out what the down there was, because they down there could be the uterus, the ovaries, or the vulva, vagina, like clitoris, like
Right.
all of the parts. And women just aren't educated as far as their anatomy, internal or external, to tell me to a doctor, like explain what's going on. So,
Right.
and that really never put two and two together to you just speaking on it. And I was like, wow, yeah, like that was my entire career. There was a rare woman who would come in and be able to correctly identify the anatomical part that was bothering her. So, and it just goes like you said, back to that disconnect and like calling it other names,
Yeah,
than what it really is. The same goes with males as well, I believe,
it does. And
Um,
people who are raised as male have their own set of things that they are taught. There's
yeah.
this emphasis on performance and
Mhm.
this belief that their penis has to be a certain size to validate their masculinity, and none of that is true. It's
Mhm.
it's presence, and um, it's unfortunate that there are so many, I'll call them myths,
Mhm.
that I feel like block us from experiencing all that's possible for us to experience in sex.
Mhm.
But
Yep.
we can change it. There are a lot of us who are initiating these conversations, and these are conversations that women want to have when there's permission given. When I'm in a room of 80 women and they're all at tables, and I say, okay, I want you to share with the table, if you're open, what you were taught about sex, and
Mhm.
just leave it at that. They're hungry for belonging in this experience of feeling this power within them that they're taught to shut down.
Mhm. Wow. The other thing I was actually just thinking when you were speaking is that in those same office visits, how women would look down when they were
Mhm.
speaking about their female organs, and parts. They would just literally and they would get really quiet and like kind of physically like shy away from engaging with me and making eye contact. They were just like so uncomfortable with the topic. It was incredible. And I don't know if in my career as a gynecologist, I ever had a woman who was 100% comfortable with speaking about And part of it was also, it's like that shame of their parts, but there was something wrong with it.
Yes.
Like it smelled, it had an itch, it had a sore, like something was wrong with it. So that made it even worse. They're coming in already shameful of their female parts, and now there's a problem with it. Oh my gosh, and a lot of them, sad to say, they'd have a condition going on for months, and they were just so embarrassed to come in to see someone about it. And it was just incredible. And obviously I created a safe space for them to feel very comfortable talking about it. And then forget about libido. Like, they would never talk about libido, like sex.
Oh, I doubt. Yeah. If they can't say the name of their parts without physically shrinking, how are they going to say to a partner, like, I really want you to do this to my outer lips before you do this? They're not going to have that vocabulary, or probably even recognize their desires, which is another thing that impedes libido, because if you're not enjoying sex, then if you don't know how delicious chocolate can be, you're not going to want chocolate.
Yeah. Well, and then I think they're also told that, you do it for the man. And there's, I think that's another conditioned, thought that we are raised with is, again, as well as being dirty and shameful and all the things that when you do it, you just do it and get it over with. It's for the man. I'm like, whoa, what about us?
The thing that's a big soapbox issue for me that you just touched on, is I'm all for male pleasure, and research shows that in heterosexual sexual dynamics, that partners with penises, I think, are 2 times more likely than vulva having partners to have an singular orgasm during a partnered sexual encounter. But the thing that I think is so tragic about that is not that women are not having orgasms, like, that's terrible, but women in bodies with vulvas are more orgasmic. Like, they're the most orgasmic bodies. Like, they are hardwired for limitless pleasure, and they're not even like getting past the surface of that. There's so much more for them to experience. And men's pleasure is important, but it is all but guaranteed in the way society has presented sex to us. Whereas women's pleasure, it's like the tip of the iceberg, is what's normalized, but there's so much more that is possible.
It was interesting at a party. It was actually a mastermind. I was talking to someone, and of course they found out what I did. And so everyone wants to talk to me about their libido. And so we were chatting, and she's like, yeah, I'm really physically attracted to my husband, this and that. She's like, but like, I want to say 10-15% of the time I orgasm. And she's like, and I don't want sex and I was like, whoa. Like, I guess actually how it was phrased is like, she didn't know why she had a low libido. And I actually asked her right out, like, do you orgasm? She's like, maybe 10-15% of the time. I'm like, there's your problem. Why are we going? Why? This is not rocket science. If it's not pleasurable to both of the participants, why are you going to want to do it over and over again? And so she is kind of funny. I said, okay, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go home and going to tell him about it, like tell him, because he may not know. So communication, right? And then number 2, it actually just communicate. And so she messaged me within 24 hours saying, as soon as she got off the plane, she talked to him. He said, the new motto in the bedroom is, you come first.
Absolutely. That should be the standard.
And she was like, we were right in practice. And she's like, it's been wonderful, and then she followed up, like, it's been wonderful ever since. And I'm like, yay. It's like, so easy.
I mean, it's easy, but it's also reconditioning deeply programmed narratives, because it wasn't, I didn't grow up knowing this. This is something that, like, I have no qualifications that ought to qualify me to teach this, but I've learned it, and I'll be damned. Can I swear on your show?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to withhold this information from other women who have not learned it yet. But the ratio I always use as a baseline, and granted, like, sex is not a place for numbers, but to have a sexual dynamic that is in overflow and that both parties are just immensely blissed out and satisfied by, I'd say a ratio of female orgasms 3 to 1 male. Like for every, and that's orgasms with ejaculation, which ejaculation and orgasm in men are actually different, but that's another podcast.
Part two.
We're here for the ladies.
Well, gosh, there's so many things that I want to touch on. Okay, so let's kind of go next into reconnecting with your body, because again, I also talk from the perspective like connection, right? Because so many women, even when we're talking about the vocabulary for our female anatomical parts, like they are so disconnected, like I was. Like, how do we get women to reconnect with their bodies and then with pleasure sooner rather than later?
Absolutely. So I think that because pleasure is such a vulnerable topic and it's such a vulnerable experience to be open to receiving it, where I often start my clients is outside of pleasure entirely. Yeah. So learning how to tune into your body's yes or no is really what I use as a foundation. So if you feel into your body, I like to use music. So if you put on Spotify, I use this practice to teach women how to feel what their physical yes feels like and what their physical no feels like. A yes will feel like an expansion. If you think of when you hear your favorite song unexpectedly, you feel something physically in your body. That's a representation of your body's yes. When something happens, like you have to slam on your brakes, or something unexpected happens that causes stress in your body, you feel probably a really hard contraction in your body, which is exaggerated compared to if you were to hear a song you're not crazy about. But I want women to start to feel these nuanced differences between yes and ooh, no. Because in sex, like those are really minute distinctions between the yes and the no. And a lot of us have been taught, without realizing it, to shut down those no's, which is how women end up in relationships where they're orgasming 10 to 15% of the time. And they're not even aware of their body saying, we don't like this, because her body is saying, we don't like this. She just doesn't know how to tune into that. So, put on a Spotify list or turn on the radio, and any song that doesn't give you that expanded feeling of yes, you skip it. And tune into how it feels before you, like, what is the point you recognize, oh, this is a yes, or this is a no, and tune into that physical sensation and do it over and over and over again until you start to feel in other parts of your life, like, oh, that's a yes, like, oh, that's a no. And then you can apply it to pleasure. And pleasure practice I love to use is just self-touch. So just like stroking your own skin and paying attention to how it feels to your arm. I'm stroking my arm for those of you who can't see. Bring awareness to then how it feels to your hand. Like, what are the different textures? Can you feel any of the hair on your arm? And just practice breaking down your sensations as you're experiencing them. And that'll start to expand your repertoire of sensation you have access to in any moment. So I start with really ground level things, and then that can build into touch and pleasure and energetics as they apply to sex, but making it more approachable and taking away anything that could be perceived as shameful or trigger those wounds is really where I like to start.
I love that. And actually, as you were talking about touching yourself, I thought of the women that message me saying, I don't want to be touched because of how they feel about their body. They don't want to be seen, and they don't want to be touched because they may have extra weight that they can't lose. And they feel so bad about this is a huge theme for the women that come to me or that are in my world, which is one reason why I talk about weight loss. Not that I want to talk about it, but I do see it as a big barrier for women and their libido, because how are we going to be intimate when we don't even want to be seen naked or touched? So I love that. Maybe as a practice for those women to just start touching themselves, like maybe even, start with the arm, but eventually maybe getting like nude and lotion and just loving the touch of your own body.
And finding things about your body that you do love and that you love with conviction. And it doesn't have to be sexual, but it could be, you could look in the mirror and tell yourself, I love this like this curve of my jawline right here. And oh, I love how soft my hands feel. Even when it's winter, my hands are not soft in the winter. So when they are soft in the spring
Yeah.
and summer, I notice and I love it. But
Mhm.
seek things about your body that you do love. So your
Mhm.
body starts to receive messages that it's loved and that it's appreciated. And
Mhm.
then, I mean, you I'm sure know about this and talk about this all the time, but yeah, taking away the pressure of making it about sex and just make it about self-love and about self-pleasure apart from sex, I find often de-armors a
Mhm.
lot of women because it alleviates the pressure.
Mhm. So let's talk about that. It wasn't a question, but like, would that be a step for some women, again, that don't want to be touched, seen, to sort of, is there a role for them to start potentially learning to connect with their own, obviously, body, but like pleasuring themselves prior to, I don't know. Is this a question for you versus like and getting comfortable with that and then taking it with a
Yeah.
partner?
That's so it That's certainly a pathway that women can choose,
Mhm.
especially if they have been taught that, their pleasure is shameful or that
Yeah.
it's only for a partner's pleasure. Then
Mhm.
yes, absolutely practicing on your own and learning to experience pleasure in your own body only for you is
Mhm.
going to start rewiring your lived experience of what pleasure is and what it can be.
Mhm.
And if you do that outside of a context where there is a partner, it can't be attached to another partner's pleasure. You're forced to integrate it as just for you.
Mhm.
So, yes, I think that could be a really beautiful practice. I like to encourage my clients who are, I have some women who, like the clients you have seen, who come to me and, they feel shame in touching their body. They
Mhm.
had one woman who had never had an orgasm in her entire life because she had been taught that sex is only for procreation, that only men get pleasure from it, and that it's dirty. And um, I encourage my clients to make a ritual out of it, to do something that brings you into your body, whether it's dancing, whether it's a bath, whether it's you know self massage, just something that brings you in tune with your body and has nothing to do with sex,
Mhm.
and then explore your pleasure sexually
Mhm.
and without attachment. So the goal
Mhm.
in those practices is not to have an orgasm. It's just to explore your own body. And then if after that practice concludes, you desire having an orgasm and you haven't, or several, however many, like, by all means, but the practice exists just for exploration and to practice being in the moment and amplifying what you feel in the moment.
I love that, baby steps, because
Baby
as you were, yeah,
steps.
talking, could, self-pleasure is also shamed,
Yeah.
like it's kind of all in that same little box. So, I feel like it's a little more acceptable to have sex and have an orgasm with sex versus pleasuring yourself. And
Yes.
at least that's how I was raised. I didn't even know what that was.
Oh, yeah, that's not something we're taught about. A lot of our sexual education as young adults came from pornography, which is like
Mhm.
getting your medical training from Grey's Anatomy, but it's all that's available because nobody's
Mhm.
having these conversations. And what's depicted in mainstream porn is male
Mm.
centered experiences of, fantasized sexuality. And not to say porn is inherently bad or to in any way shame it. Porn can be done really beautifully, but yeah, self-pleasure and celebration of female orgasmic potential and capacity is not something that's represented even there.
Mhm. Yeah, I see. Yeah. And I love your stepwise approach because again, coming off that shame, it's going to be a lot harder for a woman just to lay down and pleasure herself. I think I love that
Yes.
stepwise approach of just touching your body and then
Yes.
maybe exploring to what feels good, not necessarily having an orgasm, but like, so how do you tell someone what feels good unless you know yourself, And sometimes that experimentation, it's fun to have on your own before
Yeah.
getting someone else involved.
Although there are some things that once you are open to,
Yeah.
once you know how to open your body and you know what your no feels like and you can lean into your yes, there are a lot of things that a partner could help
Mhm.
teach a woman about her body. And there's something incredibly healing about being opened to places you can't take yourself by a partner who you trust and feel safe with, and who can hold you through that incredibly vulnerable process. And it's transformative. It's one of the things that I think is most powerful about sex.
So how do we help women get out of their heads? Because this is another thing I hear a lot of times from women is like they get, they're doing their obligatory sex, once, twice, 3 times a week, whatever their determined frequency is. And so of course it's on the timer. Here we go into the bedroom. But when she gets in there, she's thinking of the grocery list and what the kids are having for lunch tomorrow and all the things, not even like what her body looks like to him, her mind may go there also, but she just can't get out of her head to get into the moment. How do you help women do that?
Yeah. I mean, it's the plight of our modern world, is it not? Like all of us are living in our heads. So if we, and we being anyone, if someone is fully in their body, it is impossible to be in their head. So again, taking the practice of being in your body outside of the bedroom, outside of the context of sex, and just learning from an embodied place, like learning in your body how it feels to be in your body, then becomes something you can translate into sex. And I love touch. I think touch is a great practice. I have clients sometimes set a timer on their phone twice a day. And when the timer goes off, they pause, they take a breath, and they just feel into the physical sensations of their body. So right now, I'll just walk you through an example. So right now, I feel I'm wearing a sweater because springtime in Atlanta can't make up its mind. And I feel the softness of the sweater against certain parts of my neck, and I don't feel it on other parts of my neck. I feel the hair grazing my left ear. I'm aware of my eyelids and how they feel on my eyes as I'm blinking. Like you can go really into the minutia. You can feel the temperature of the room, but just for a minute, bring your awareness. It's a meditation really to the sensations of your body, and then let it go. Let it be done and get back to your day. And when the timer goes off again, do it again, and just make that a practice for a month. And you'll have more awareness of your body. You'll be more in your body than you were before that. And another thing I love is dancing. Every day I dance every single day. It moves energy. I think it's really therapeutic. We carry trauma in our body. It helps move it through. Turn on music, close your eyes, be in a place of privacy, and dance without giving a shit what you look like.
Love that.
Like you can howl, you can scream into a pillow, you can twerk. I don't care, but move your body in whatever way feels good. And notice how you feel after doing that versus how you felt before.
Easy enough, right?
Easy enough. And then as far as bringing it into sex, I mean, there's a lot that we could talk about for that, but even doing those little practices outside of sex, outside of the pressure, outside of it being about anyone other than you, you're going to have more capacity to come into your body more easily and more readily in the bedroom.
I love that. I love that. You hit on a word that I say, it's become like my tagline, one word tagline for most of 2022 and now into 2023 is awareness. Like I always say, like I have this huge movement now in all my programs and all my work with clients about awareness, about so many things. I know you're talking about awareness about our body, and that's how we reconnect and get out of our head. Same with everything in health that I teach women. I'm like, how do we change something unless we already know what we're doing? We got to be aware, right? And that comes off also with being in your body. Like, we are just 24/7 run, totally disconnected to how our bodies feel, let alone how they feel when we're intimate with somebody, right?
Yeah.
That going back to the basics of just being present in your body.
Yes.
So important.
And when you start building awareness in yourself, you can then communicate that to another, which allows you to be more known. You can start learning another's, body and the cues that tell you things. There's so much power in awareness and being present and attuned to the moment in all aspects, certainly not just in sex, but the first step of changing anything or appreciating anything is awareness.
I love that. I love your approach because, when I'm gonna have you on, I'm like, how does she do this in like workshops? Like, did everyone just get naked and start touching this?
No, that would be really triggering for a lot
Yeah,
of women. That would
yeah,
not build safety, and
yep,
good sex only happens in safety. So
yeah.
we do it outside of sex, and then as you feel open to it in whatever way feels safest, you get to bring it into your self-pleasure practice, into your partnerships. But it starts with our own bodies
Mm.
and our own permission that we give ourselves, and how we rewire and reprogram the false stories that we were taught and that subconsciously we believe.
Do you have partners come to you to work together?
Yeah, I
Or
do.
yeah, because
I've worked with couples before.
yeah, I'm thinking like what a beautiful practice if someone is open,
Mm.
and what I see a lot of times with women with libido is they think that they're broken, that they need to be
Mm.
fixed because their partner keeps telling them like, I don't want to say blaming them, but sort of in a roundabout way, blaming them for their lack of a intimate intimacy or a sex life, and they're like, you never want it, you pointing the finger. So
Oh,
then when she comes to me and it's like, I'm broken, I need to be fixed. Give me something to fix me. So like, but there are partners out there because they're in my world as well, really curious about how they can help their partner because they know it's not just her, it's something they can do together. And so I just was thinking, I'm sure there's some partners that come together to you to
yeah.
say, okay, we know this, we want to connect on a deeper level, but we're having this issue. Can you help us?
Yes. And there are a lot of I mean, it's beautiful what can be done. Again, we don't use sex. We use ritual,
Mhm,
we use
mhm,
connection, we use breath,
mhm,
we use intimacy outside of sex. But
mhm.
if I can go back to the point you just made, first of all, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah,
And I'm sure it's something that a lot of women experience, because let's look at what we're taught about sex. Of course, if a man sees that, you bend a woman over, you put it in and she orgasms, like, and his partner's not doing that, what's wrong with
yeah.
her? This is what is supposed to happen. If a woman sees that's what I'm supposed to do and that's not how my body works, what's wrong with me? We're
Mhm.
basing our
Yep.
expectations on false representations. And there's no widespread knowledge about how our bodies work and what is actually, I don't want to say the word normal, it's what's coming to mind, what is actually to be expected.
Mhm.
So, like, yeah, you don't operate like a porn star. Like, what you do is a lot better. And
Exactly.
there's room for you to learn how. But even those accusations, they're not actually directed at the woman, is what I'm saying. It's,
Mhm,
hey, you're not doing this thing that I was expecting you could do, that is not even real. It's what
mhm,
is being said. There's not actually a problem.
mhm. Yeah, you have to look at my TikTok because I had one video like, oh my gosh, over 10,000 comments of women of like just mostly of that, you know, very shamed, I need to be fixed, what's wrong with me? And also kind of lashing out at their partners, like it's all
Mhm.
about him, and so like it's, and then occasionally I get a man in there that just really tries to blow up the whole feed, but with us thinking that we're egocentric or whatever because we want to focus on our sexuality.
Oh, but the
um
thing about that, and I had a video blow up on TikTok a couple months ago, and the same thing happened. But my comments were from men who were
yeah.
like, "They are all selfish. All women care about is their
Mhm.
own pleasure." I'm like, actually, check the statistics, bro.
Yeah.
But like, the thing is, when a woman is in overflow, when a woman is fully sexually satisfied and feels completely met in sex, she is the most lavish, giving partner and the best version of herself. And everybody in her sphere benefits, most of all, her partner. Like, you
Hmm.
want to talk about a woman who is like playful and spontaneous and up for anything, like, satisfy her
Mhm.
fully and completely. It's like the magic missing piece.
Mhm.
There's nothing lost in giving and giving well, sexually to a woman only gained. And men get to feel like a sex god if they do that. I mean, win-win.
I know. Hopefully more men are listening to this episode.
Share with your partners, ladies.
Yes, exactly. And I do have in some of my programs too, I have the men over listening in on some of the trainings, and it's good when they're open and they're curious as far as how they can help. That makes for a healthier relationship, especially if she's got some struggles herself that she's overcoming. Just being understood, appreciated, heard, seen is super important to a lot of women. So
I will say that while I work specifically with women with vulvas and in partnerships to support women in experiencing all that's possible for their bodies to experience and deepen intimacy and all of that, for the men who may be listening to this, who independently desire learning about this, there's an incredible teacher named Kenneth Play. He has a book, Beyond Satisfied. I would recommend looking into if you want to learn how to help your female partner unlock these parts of herself and, help lead the way in that, because, oh my gosh, it would be potently healing for both partners. But if that's something that male listeners are interested in exploring, highly recommend his work.
love that. Or ladies can get it as a Father's Day gift, a
Oh
birthday
yeah,
present.
happy birthday.
Happy birthday. I've been given a couple presents in my day of okay, this is for you, but it's really for me. So how do you go about creating opportunities for that really deep healing through, sex and sexual energy, both in a partnership and for someone by themselves, solo?
Yeah, I think I think that those of us who teach things like this teach because we were either born with gifts and realized that nobody had them, or you're like me and you were really bad at these things and had to learn them from square one. So one of the things that transformed my relationships, all relationships, not just sexual and intimate, and was born from a place of pain and deep struggle, is learning how to communicate. And you said it earlier, but so first of all, learning how to be aware of my body and feel when it's telling me something, because our bodies are the most wise and persistent truth sayers. They don't lie to us. They tell us the truth every time. And learning how to tune into my body and then learning how to put words to that and share it in a way that was not attacking, was not blaming, did not push others away, but revealed it and invited people closer to me. And then recognizing how to set boundaries, not as a way to wall off, but as a way to invite people closer, and how to recognize my standards in relationship and making peace with knowing this is what is required of anyone who wants to be in my life. And if these aren't being met, then I am at peace, gracefully exiting this, and my life is better for it. So I think that it's a complicated answer, but communication, having confidence in knowing that anything I feel, I can identify, express as an invitation. And if I cannot be met in a way that would allow me to show up as my best self and invite the other person I'm communicating with to show up as their best self in our relationship, the most loving thing to do is walk away. And how to do that gracefully. I feel invincible. I feel like I am unfuckable with, no matter the situation, I know that I've got me.
I love that. So you brought in the things that again, aside from awareness, I always talk about the ABCs: awareness, boundaries, and communication. So important. So important. So we're on the same.
Talk dirty to me.
We are on the same page. And I love that. And, again, when we're posing the question of how to heal through sexual energy, you brought it way, I think everyone thinks it's got to start in the bedroom. It's got to start right on the bed and okay, go, let's practice with a partner. And you're like, no, let's go all the way back to getting to know ourselves and our needs and our yeses and our nos, and communicating them and lovingly setting boundaries, and not being that, yes to everybody else.
Yes.
Ultimately leading to the no for you. That's not where we grow and become aware of what we need. So,
Absolutely. Because what happens when you communicate, I always say truth is the most potent aphrodisiac. If
mm,
lines of communication are open, if energetic channels are open within your body and within the body of your partner, like, and there's clean energy flow between
mhm,
you, sex is a barometer
mm,
of relational dynamics. So if there's any closure or constriction, it's going to come out in sex. Whereas
mhm,
if you learn how to keep channels open and keep connection and energy flowing, that's also going to translate in sex. And of course, there are more advanced practices and deeper things, but for the purpose of this conversation, these are tools you can start implementing immediately, and
mm,
you will see the benefits in the bedroom and in all other areas of your life, absolutely. But there's a
mhm,
ripple effect and it's all connected.
mhm. Yeah. And we won't even get into the energetics of like the sacred, like survival and like the sacral,
Mhm.
you know, area and the solar plexus and like we won't get into that because that could be a whole nother podcast of like the energetics and like feeling like closed off and not safe.
Yeah,
But um so we'll wrap up soon, but I really want to hit on this one really. I know this is going to be a big, maybe not big, but explain to us the 5 types of healing transcendent orgasms that are possible for women with a vulva and how to start using them, inviting them in to
absolutely.
use them.
Absolutely. So, first, I'm going to start by defining orgasm. So, a lot of
Mhm.
us, I don't use the term all, I'd say most women with a vulva are taught that an orgasm is what I call a ding and done affectionately. It's when there's a steady rise, peak, and an immediate drop. I had a woman once at a workshop share that orgasms are like Christmas morning. You get really excited leading up to Christmas morning, and there's all this buildup, and then it's Christmas morning, yay, and then it's over, and you're depressed. That's a ding and done orgasm. They're great, they're fun, they're short and sweet, but they are not ultimately the most satisfying orgasms, and they're not going to change your life. The five a transcendent orgasm I define as an orgasm that either opens up a new level of appreciation and awareness of what your body is capable of doing. It rewires some part of who you are and how you show up in the world.
Mhm.
It's an experience that can stay with you for days and you can feel reverberating long after it's over. It's something that heals or shifts something in you in some way. It doesn't necessarily equal climax, though it
Mhm.
can. So
Mhm.
the 5 types are extended clitoral, and that's a clitoral orgasm that, unlike a ding and done, which you hit the peak, you drop, and it's kind of sensitive to touch. You need a little bit of a break if you're going to have one again, if at all. These are clitoral orgasms that go on and on and on and on and on. So it takes that Christmas morning orgasm and turns it into more of a Hanukkah orgasm that lasts for much longer. The second type is G spot, squirting, or gushing. And these are orgasms that can result in ejaculatory fluid being released from the body. They can be incredibly cathartic. The
Mm,
third is cervical orgasms,
mm,
which the cervix is at the base of the uterus, at the top of the vagina. Women who may not have a cervix because they've had surgery, or that's still an energetic center. It's still
mm,
possible for them to experience these transformative orgasms. Those are very vulnerable, often result in emotional releases. So crying,
mm,
laughing, screaming, um, deeply, deeply healing, and require a lot of safety and
mm,
openness to
mm,
have. Again, all of
mm,
these are things you can do with a partner in
mm.
safety, or that you can do just by yourself in safety. Fourth kind, non-genital energy breath. So more esoteric, non-contact orgasms. And then the fifth I call the holy grail orgasms. And those are orgasms that go on for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, just on and on and on, and build and build and build and build. And those are the 5 types of transcendent orgasms that I believe are possible for all women with vulvas to experience.
Mm.
And I teach them in my group program, School of Sexual Sorcery, which I'll give details after the call, but information about that, if you hear this and you're like, oh my God, hell yeah, is on my website, www.pleasuresorcery.com.
And we'll make sure we get all the links for for everything. We'll talk about that at the end, because I want to make sure everyone knows where to find you and all the good stuff. But I actually had an aha moment as you were explaining the different orgasms, because I know there's a great deal, and I don't know statistically what the numbers are, great deal of women that experience clitoral orgasms and not cervical, like with penetration or with intercourse, like with penetration, I just should say. And I have to wonder if it's more of an energetic that women aren't experiencing those cervical orgasms because they don't feel safe, and and are feeling less vulnerable by having the clitoral orgasm. I don't know. It was just something I was like, I wonder if there's more of an energetic, deep-seated reason why more women don't experience on a regular basis those cervical orgasms.
Yeah. Well, a lot of trauma is stored in that part of our body, going back to the sacral conversation that we're not going to go into because this can't be a 3-hour podcast. We're going to have limits here. But a lot of, that's a really tender, it's the gateway. It's the gateway to life. It has to be well guarded. And in a lot of women, there's been trauma to it, either, engaging in sex before she was ready, sometimes so much as putting a tampon in your vagina without being ready. And I don't mean turned on, but like literally, like, I'm going to put in a tampon now, like saying the words out loud, giving your body some sort of heads up. There's some intention setting. There are a lot of ways in which that part of our bodies are traumatized, and we carry that. And if we are with partners that we don't feel fully safe with, and that's a very general term, it could be we're with someone that we don't feel prioritizes our pleasure, or who we feel, might emotionally drop us in some way. Like there's a lot that goes into getting to the point that you can experience those. Some of it could be technique. There's a certain technique that opens the cervix, and there's a lot of things that close it. So I don't know the statistics either, but I do know that there's nothing wrong with it being harder to have cervical orgasms. That is a beautiful mechanism of your body keeping you safe and protecting you. And there's de-armoring, there's reprogramming that can happen to help your body release and relax into receiving those.
Yeah. I think my point is also like, I just made that correlation because like you said, it's even outside that sexual safety. It's like, do I feel safe in my home life, financially, like that whole security, it's all stored there. But I think a lot of women sort of say, well, I can't have a cervical orgasm. I only can have a clitoral. And like what you're saying is like, no, you can. It's just like you said, reprogramming and just working through it versus just saying, nope, can't have it, can't do it, not going to happen.
Well, there's a lot of vulnerability in stepping into exploring something that you really want. And that I see it in my voice clients too. The trans women I work with really want to have voices that match their identity. And while it's not sex, it's still this really core aspect of self that they want really badly. It's like if you want, for any woman who struggled with infertility, there's great vulnerability in even admitting you want a baby because there's such room for disappointment. And I think that a lot of it may be self-protective in women saying, oh, I can't do this, because then it eliminates the possibility of disappointment. Just because you haven't, though, doesn't mean that you can't. It just means you haven't yet, but it is possible.
I love that. Wow. I think we could just talk on this. Like there's just so many rabbit holes we could go down. There's so many. And perhaps we were talking before, I think there's so much room for future collaboration, whether it be another podcast or lives or somewhere, because I think our messages are very, very much aligned. But we have different training, different expertise, and we just come at it from a different angle. But I think they're very beautifully, in alignment. That's all I can add. The only word that keeps coming to my mind is just aligned beautifully. And I think this audience is going to get a lot out of our conversation today and any future conversations that we have. But I always love to bookend my podcast talking about you, because we've done a lot to help the listeners, and we kind of found out how you got into doing this. But 2 last questions, are actually theoretically 3. Do you have a morning routine?
That depends. So I have an 8-year-old
Okay.
son who's with me every other week. Right now he's in school. So on weeks that he is with me, I have a very structured morning routine. I wake up, I'll brush my teeth, I'll get dressed, which sometimes might be just putting a hoodie on to go through carpool. Then I'll make his breakfast, get his lunchbox packed, and we'll eat and get out the door. On mornings that it is just me and I'm on my, my solo week, my routine in the morning, I used to say I didn't have a routine, but my routine in the morning is to start my day feeling most in flow, most in my body, most easeful. So usually I don't set an alarm. I'll wake up when I wake up, and I may go to Pilates. I may go for a hike. I may take a bath. I may dance on my pole that I have in my house. I do whatever I want to do, basically, for a couple of hours.
Wow, I love
And
it.
then I get ready for my day and I see clients and or go work if I have an admin day, because I only see clients certain days. Then I'll go someplace where I feel really good working.
Mm.
But my morning routine is to feel intentionally good in whatever way feels aligned in that morning. I'm playing with putting more structure around it.
Hmm.
But for right now, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, and I don't think I mean I just started recently asking this question because I'm curious. Because I think so many people they don't do anything for themselves at all ever because they're told it has to look a certain way in a certain amount of time, doing a certain amount of things. And I love your flexibility is like you're intentional, with your son, you're intentional being with him, and making sure he gets off to school and that you've connected, it sounds like, before he goes to school. And then when you don't have him, you know, it's about you and what you need before you actually pour into others, which I love. And that looks different every day, which I totally love because you're tuning into your yes or no's that day, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And how
Exactly.
about night? Do you have an evening routine?
I do. So my evening routine, again, there's some flexibility.
Yep.
Sometimes it involves, I used to not do any work in the evenings, but as my businesses are growing and, um, I'm the weather's beautiful here and I want to be outside during the day. So
Yeah.
some of my work I do after my son goes to bed, but it's always in a way that feels really pleasurable. So sitting on my bed under a furry blanket with my cats and drinking tea, or in the bathtub by candlelight. And that's not necessarily working. Sometimes I'm just hanging out on my bed under the fur blanket or the bathtub, not working. But I always do my skincare routine, which again is pretty intuitive. I don't do the
Yeah.
same thing every
Yeah.
day
Me too.
necessarily, but
Mhm.
I always wash my face. I always do my skincare. I always floss and brush my teeth. And I usually get to bed later than I mean to.
Got it. Got it. I love that. I love that. Something came to me. It just came and went. Oh, it's interesting. Even sitting on your furry blanket, I don't know about you, but a lot of times if I'm just even sitting or obviously in the shower or the bath, I have these downloads. I'm like, oh, that's a great idea to do a video on or do a training on or put in my core. Like some of my best work comes from not actually quote unquote working. Like I'm just
Absolutely.
relaxing and it just really comes to me, which is really how I love things to come to me, just when I'm relaxing. Um,
Absolutely. When you're in open receptivity.
Yeah, exactly. For me personally, when I'm trying too hard to think about something, it doesn't come. So I need to like chill and step away and just let it. Usually for me, it's like I said, a bath, a shower, just sitting quietly petting one of my animals or out in nature on a walk is really where I get most of my downloads.
That's
Last
beautiful.
question, I promise. This one has actually been the question I've asked since the first episode of this podcast, which is
Oh, wow.
what is one thing you know now that you wish you knew 5, 10, maybe even 15 years ago?
Oh, wow. That is a really rich question. I wish that I knew that the things I judged were the things that were calling me.
Mm,
So I remember this work has been something that's been coming through and wanting to come through for at least 10 years now. And because of the nature of this work, it's
mm,
somewhat taboo, but
mhm,
regardless of what you're called to, be it work, be it in your personal life, it feels really vulnerable because
mm,
it's something that's important. It's something that is your soul's calling, I think, wanting to come through. And I remember, judging a lot. I was really judgmental of things that I've now realized were actually just things I was repressing in myself. And I would see people embodying, and that judgment was coming from a place of wanting what they had and wanting the freedom that they felt and not allowing myself to have it. So I think that, my journey's been my journey, but if I could go back and tell myself anything, it would be, look at the things you judge. What are the messages your triggers are telling you?
Oh my gosh, I love that. That is really powerful. Like, that's probably one of the best answers I've ever gotten.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Cause it's true. Like, we all get triggered, and like yours was probably trigger over and over. Like, you got to look at like why.
Yeah.
And is it, turn that mirror back on you and think, is it something that I want to explore, and give yourself permission to explore it, right?
Yeah.
Without judging yourself.
Without judging yourself. Because if you don't express these parts of yourself, they're going to be expressed somehow, probably sideways, probably in a way that's damaging to something you don't mean to damage, or to someone you don't mean to hurt, or to yourself. And they're just messengers.
Yeah. I love that. So tell the audience, where can they find you? How can they work with you? What do you have going on? All of it. We want to know all the details. Like, first of all, where's your favorite place to hang out so they can come troll you on social media, that is?
I am most active on Instagram. My handle there is @embodied, EMBODIED _mama, MAMA. I am really active there. I love connecting with people and building community on that platform. I offer a program, as I mentioned, called School of Sexual Sorcery. We're currently in School of Sexual Sorcery right now, but the next one starts in September. So launch will probably be happening in the next, what month is it?
April.
April, thank you. Time of this recording, it'll be happening in the next 3 months that launch will open, doors will open. And in that, I teach these 5 transcendent orgasms, principles and practices for destigmatizing sex, opening your body to experience more pleasure in life, in sex with a partner, or just on your own. And it's really transformative work, and to do in community with other women. It's all virtual, so wherever you are, would love to explore if that feels aligned to you. And information about that and about all of the things I do is on my website, www.pleasuresorcery.com. The next offering I have coming up is a women's retreat in August, about 90 minutes outside of Atlanta, Georgia, in a gorgeous forest retreat center. And it's called the Women Who Roar Retreat. A business partner and I created these radical expression ceremonies for women about a year ago because we needed a place to feel free and scream and roar and express these big emotions that we as women are taught not to reveal, just to, be a good girl, be a lady. And we wanted to be naked and scream in sisterhood. So we created it, and other women wanted it too. So we made these ceremonies, and then that grew. And now we're hosting a 3-day retreat. That's called the Women Who Roar Retreat. Information is going to be up soon about it, but feel free to shoot me a DM or connect with me online on my website if you want more information about that. Or working one-on-one or with a partner. I work one-on-one with women and in pairs with their partners.
I love that. So good. Wow. This was an amazing conversation. I thank you for your time. It's early for both of us, but it's a great day to start. A great way to start the day, having this really moving conversation that we need to have with more women, and more women hopefully will listen and just be open to starting to explore their self-pleasure, sexuality, and hopefully more open to that destigmatizing the taboo nature of, or how it's been condition all of us to be taboo, and start trying to decondition that programming. So Thank you so much. And go check her out. I've already been, like I said, trolling your Instagram, and I will certainly be following along. And who knows, maybe I'll be in one of your courses someday.
I would love to have you. I would love to partner with you. I think
Absolutely.
I'm so glad to connect with you. And thank you so much for the incredible work that you're doing and for this amazing resource of your podcast where women can engage in these conversations that really don't happen in many spaces. So thank you for providing that for them.
Thank you. And with that, I'm out of here. Talk to you again soon.